What if I told you that 74,000 years ago, the entire human race was almost completely erased in a single afternoon, and every single person alive today is the descendant of fewer than 1,000 survivors who somehow made it through hell? That's not a metaphor. That's not exaggeration. That is the terrifying reality of the most dangerous moment in all of human prehistory. Right now, as you're sitting there, breathing, thinking, feeling, you exist only because a tiny handful of your ancestors survived something so catastrophic that it nearly wiped our entire species off the planet in one brutal stroke. This isn't just ancient history. This is your story. And once you hear what actually happened, you'll never see your own life the same way again. And if this one hits you hard, like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what does knowing this change for you? Let's go back 75,000 years. You're standing in a lush green Africa that looks nothing like the dry savanna we imagine today. The rivers are full. The forests are thick with fruit and game. For your ancestors, this was paradise. These weren't primitive cavemen barely scraping by. These were highly capable humans. They crafted sophisticated stone tools, some of the finest ever made at that point. They created jewelry from shells and animal teeth. They painted with ochre. They lived in tight-knit groups, cared for their elderly, and almost certainly had some form of spoken language. They were smart, social, and thriving. They had mastered fire for generations. They hunted large game with coordination and strategy. Mothers raised children who would grow up to explore further than any previous human. For the first time in history, our species felt safe, like we had finally figured the world out. You have to understand this feeling. They weren't living in constant fear of extinction. They were living like winners. The planet had rewarded them. Food was plentiful. The climate was relatively stable. They had spread across large parts of Africa and were even beginning to eye the routes northward. They had no idea that the ground beneath their feet was about to betray them in the most violent way possible, because at that exact moment, beneath a volcano in what is now Indonesia, pressure had been building for thousands of years. A super eruption was coming, one so massive it would make everything that came before look small. Your ancestors were living at the very peak of their early success, right before the world decided to hit the reset button on humanity, and almost none of them would survive what happened next. Then it happened deep beneath Lake Toba in Sumatra. The earth tore itself open. It wasn't just a volcano. It was a supervolcano, one of the largest eruptions in the last 2.5 million years. In a matter of hours, it exploded with a force thousands of times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. Imagine standing hundreds of kilometers away and still hearing it, a sound so deep and terrifying it felt like the sky itself was screaming. A column of superheated gas and ash shot 40 kilometers straight into the atmosphere. The sky turned from blue to black in minutes. Ash began raining down like gray snow, covering everything in a toxic blanket. For the people living in Africa and across Eurasia, the horror came in waves. First, the sun disappeared. Day turned into an eerie, endless twilight. Temperatures plummeted. Then, the acid rain started falling. The air became difficult to breathe. You wake up one morning in a world that had always provided for you, and now it's trying to kill you. Your hunting grounds are buried under ash. The rivers are poisoned. The plants your children ate are dying. The animals you hunted are either dead or fleeing in panic. Within weeks, global temperatures dropped by up to 15 degrees in some regions. A volcanic winter had begun. This wasn't a slow decline. This was sudden, violent, and merciless. And yet, this was only the beginning, because the real killer wasn't the eruption itself. It was what came after. The long, dark, freezing years that followed. The years that would push the last few thousand humans to the very edge of existence. Now came the long night. For the next 6 years, the sun was little more than a faint glow behind thick clouds of ash. Global temperatures crashed. Ice sheets advanced. Africa, once lush and generous, turned into a cold, starving wasteland. Your ancestors were now fighting a war on every front. Hunger became their constant companion. Most large animals had died off or migrated away. Plant life withered. Groups that once numbered 50 or 60 were reduced to small bands of 10 to 15 people, desperately clinging to each other. They ate whatever they could find. Insects, Roots, the last remaining scraps of meat from animals that had starved before them. Some groups were forced to eat the dead just to survive a few more days. The cold was relentless. Without proper clothing or shelter, nights became deadly. Mothers held their children close, trying to share what little body heat remained. Disease spread quickly in weakened bodies. Grief became normal. Many groups simply walked until they could walk no more. But here's what's truly humbling. Some of them refused to give up. They made impossible choices. They migrated to new territories they had never seen before. They learned to cooperate in ways humans never had to before. A single clever idea, maybe finding a hidden hot spring, or discovering how to detoxify certain plants, could mean the difference between life and death for an entire bloodline. Every single day was a coin flip. And yet, against all odds, a few tiny groups kept the human flame alive. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were the smartest, but because they were the most stubborn, the most lucky, the most willing to keep going when everything told them to stop. This is where your story almost ended. When the long night finally began to lift, something profound had changed. The human population had been crushed down to somewhere between 500 and 1,000 breeding individuals. That's it. We call this the Toba genetic bottleneck. Nearly all the genetic diversity our species once had was wiped out. If you compare our DNA to that of chimpanzees or gorillas, we are shockingly similar to one another. That's because almost all of us today descend from this tiny surviving group. Think about what that means for you. Your immune system, your metabolism, even parts of your brain chemistry carry the scars and strengths of that bottleneck. Some scientists believe this near-extinction event is exactly why humans were later able to adapt so explosively. When a population is pushed this hard, evolution kicks into overdrive. The survivors weren't just lucky, they carried traits that would eventually help their descendants thrive in every environment on Earth. But it came at a cost. We are more vulnerable to certain diseases because we lack the genetic variety other species still have. At the same time, we gained an incredible ability to work together, to innovate under pressure, and to bounce back from disaster. The same event that almost killed us may have accidentally made us the most adaptable species the planet has ever seen. You are not here by accident. You are the final result of the ultimate survival test. Everything you are, your intelligence, your resilience, your ability to hope, even when things look impossible, carries the fingerprint of those few thousand humans who stared extinction in the face and refused to blink. So the next time life feels overwhelming, the next time you face something that seems impossible, I want you to remember this. You come from the survivors of the most dangerous moment in human history. When the sky went black, when the world froze, when death was the most likely outcome, your ancestors kept going. Not because they knew they would make it, but because something inside them simply wouldn't quit. That same stubborn spark is still inside you right now. We are not here because life was easy. We are here because life tried to erase us and failed. Every breath you take is a quiet victory that began 74,000 years ago in the ashes of a broken world. Every dream you have, every risk you take, every time you choose hope over despair, you are continuing the longest comeback story in Earth's history. So, the question isn't whether you're strong enough. The question is, do you realize just how unbreakable you already are? You are the living proof that humanity doesn't break when things get hard. We become something more. Thanks for watching. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, drop a comment and tell me, what does knowing this change for you? And if you want more deep dives into the hidden chapters of human history, subscribe. We've only just begun. I'll see you in the next one.